Yeah, that'll be a match for my steel drums. Ding, 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 ding. Whatever do you mean? Takes him down.
Oh, that would be a sidekick. Wild Science.
Give it to me. Yeah, imagine playing air hockey while having a bowl of macaroni and cheese. In a world with you.
This is the Narrative Nerds Podcast with Shane Ryan and Carter Petrie.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on the Narrative Nerds Podcast, episode number 4. It is I, Carter, and I'm here with my good buddy, Mr. Shane Ryan. How you doing, bud?
I am doing so well. Thanks for the intro, Carter. Just having such a lovely December the 12th, and I am ready to talk about some stories. We've been on a little hiatus, and I've been itching. You know, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of, having to jot down stuff in a notebook rather than calling and telling you about it. It's been miserable.
Oh, I know. I've had nothing to do. I've just been over here scratching away at everything that itches. I don't know what to do with myself, and so yeah, I had a little bit of a hard drive malfunction with my computer. We lost a little bit of content, but the general, the real important stuff stuck around. So we got that. That's important. We're gonna need that. So for today, we're gonna be looking at a story by the wonderful Oscar Wilde. He wrote that bad boy in 1888. It's called A Devoted Friend. We're going to be leaping right into that. Doing a little ad action and some superhero simulation.
Yeah, and before we get started, just a real quick personal advertising note. If you guys like this podcast, if this is something that you enjoy listening to, don't forget to tell a friend about it. Like us on Facebook. Share our posts on Facebook so we can get a little bit more reach. Anything helps. We're also very excited that we're now on Podbean. We have our own feed there, our own little website, narrativenerds.podbean.com. We're also out on Spotify, and we're working on getting on iTunes and maybe some of the other big podcast networks. So stay tuned for that. But please, if you enjoy the show, if you think that this is cool, let somebody know. And if they like it, maybe they'll let somebody know, and so on and so forth. But we really do appreciate all the support thus far.
Oh yeah, we want to be hearing from people we don't know saying, oh, that was kind of fun. I enjoyed getting down with you guys, and I look forward to the next one because we're putting in as much possible effort here as we can, and we really want to be, pushing our own envelopes of what we read, what we do, what we discuss, understanding more about reading and writing, and goofing around and having fun. So thank you again so much for tuning in.
Absolutely. Yeah. So speaking of tuning in, let's give you something to listen to. Carter, you ready to jump into the warm-up?
I would love to. I'm feeling a little chilly, and I want to get a little bit toasty.
Oh, yeah, let's get toasty. Yeah, it's winter time now. It's the holiday season. All right, so this week for the warm-up, we are going to be doing something new. We're doing
the Superhero Simulator.
So this is a new game where we've taken kind of like a superhero name generator, and we've generated a couple of names, and we're going to, kind of make up some powers. And some
weird, dude.
Yeah, we're gonna make up some powers and maybe some arch nemesis for them, and see where it goes before we jump into our short suit.
Nemesis or is it Nemesi?
Oh, I don't know. Nemesis.
What kind of plural is that?
Nemesi.
Nemesi. That sounds like a villain in itself.
It does. All right, Carter. So I got the first one here.
What you got?
The first superhero is Dr. Notes. Dr. Notes.
Dr. Notes.
Which for me, I immediately think like a doctor's note, literally, a sheet on paper So maybe his superpower is whatever he writes on the paper, when he signs it, it becomes like reality.
Oh yeah, you can't go to work today.
Yeah.
Is
Dr. Notes.
He has the power to change anybody's day. You could be staying home doing whatever you want with the power of Dr. Notes' abilities.
I wonder how he became Dr. Notes. You know, like.
Well, I'm assuming he probably had his master's degree first, so he's probably Master Notes. This guy went to college.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
So
that makes sense.
Master Notes. That's kind of like Elliot, Master Post.
Yeah, Elliot Post. Shout out.
Hey,
I hope you're listening.
What's good, buddy? All right, so I think it's Elliot, and he started as Master Post, Master Note. Yeah, Master Post, and then he evolved into Dr. Notes.
I like it. I like it. The other here's
go ahead.
Here's another superpower he could have. It could be like musical notes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's working on his solo album. Next thing he knows, he's firing notes off that are just so powerful that they're like little missiles and they target your ears.
And it's like classical music mixed with K-pop.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know how that would integrate or be any sort of a hybrid. But that could work. He's some kind of a... Does he have like a device that shoots these out of? Like, is it coming out of the instrument? Is it coming out of his
I don't know. I kind of imagined like a
clarinet.
Like a saxophone?
Yeah.
Oh, a clarinet too.
Yeah, just some kind of a tube.
Some type of woodwind.
Or brass, whatever it may be, but he's lobbing notes left and right, taking down villains who are coming in with flats, all sorts of minor chords. He's like, nah, get railed with majors.
Okay, so now that we have the Dr. Notes character down, I have a character in mind called Eardrum, and it would be like some type of ear-like beast. and he plays a drum. Do you think he would be the sidekick, or do you think he would be the arch nemesis?
I feel like Dr. Notes is definitely the good guy here. And Eardrum is coming in with like those, what do they call them, like taiko drums? The big, big Tibetan drums or whatever those are. Just he's just shaking the earth.
You'll never be a match for my steel drums. Ding, 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 ding.
Whatever do you mean? Takes him down, rips right through the hide of the drum.
Oh, you know what? Maybe the arch nemesis, maybe his or hers, I guess. The weapon against.
It's a dude.
It's a piece of shit, dude.
He's bad.
Typical.
He's a bad boy.
What if it's like they play discordant tunes? So it's just like somebody, like, I don't know, stepped on a piano on the floor or something, and it's just the grossest tone.
Oh, that sounds pretty much like what I was thinking. I was thinking like put a record on a turntable and then change the BPMs, drop it way down, make the song like half as slow, which makes the entire pitch of the song come way down. So you got this beautiful little classical piano piece. It goes from like... And then it turns into... And he just kind of slowly creeps into the scene.
You just make any sort of new theme song just by slowing down classic music.
That's right. That's how it happens.
I like it.
So what I was seeing for Dr. Notes is like... There's this old timer. It's this old timer who's in the library, and you really never see him. It's kind of like the myth of the old timer, but he kind of like guards, like watches over this one section in the library, and that library section is how to for dummies and like SparkNote print-offs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and he's just the guardian. They call him the doctor. but he's guarding the
The
notes.
doctor. The notes doctor. I like it.
He's watching
Okay, so-
over the dummies.
So I have another one for you here, Carter. The next superhero name that we generated is Liquid Steel.
Ooh, an oxymoron.
Liquid Steel. Yeah, almost. Yeah, a little bit. What's your first thought? Just boom, right off the tip of the noodle there. What's the first?
My noodle was spitting out some stuff that had to do with just like a tidal wave, and then when it would crash onto land, it would immediately formulate into like a structure of steel of some sort.
Oh, cool.
So you never know what kind of shape it's going to be based on the splash radius, like the ballistics of the water going on the sand.
Kind of like lava, where it would just like
Yeah.
crash,
Perfect.
and then it would cool right away and form like a rock
What is
feature
oh,
structure.
man, that is some wild science. Like
Wild science.
we could have a little.
Oh,
segment.
that would be his sidekick.
Wild
Science. And he would just be like, a water being, but he would fluctuate through the states of water. So like, if he needed to slip under a door, he could either turn liquid, or if he needed to like get through like a vent or something, he could turn into a water vapor.
Oh,
And then if
so
he
he can
needed-
go
if he
through
needed to-
gas too, even.
Yeah, exactly. And if he needed to punch somebody, he could turn into ice.
Dude, I honestly feel like that'd be the most powerful superhero because you could never die. Yeah, it's like, oh, we're about to get struck by like 400 missiles, and it's like, nope, water,
Boom.
or
gas is
like,
formed.
nope, I'm gonna turn into titanium.
Yeah, psych.
Good luck.
That would be pretty rad.
You might,
I think-
like, kind of
I
change
think-
my color layout, but you're not gonna really change my form because, yeah, that's the great part about science too. Is that like even if you take a little piece of stick and you light it on fire, and the stick goes away, it's not like you just eliminated all of the energy that was the stick. It actually turned into gas, so it just changed forms. You're never going to be able to destroy him. So if you incinerate him, he's going to turn into a gas. If you freeze him, he's turning into ice. You know, there's really no way to mess this guy up.
Maybe they're the super villains then, rather than the superheroes. Because I feel like the villains always have like this impending doom aspect where they can never be killed, and like they're the highest power. And maybe that's just because Hollywood has to have a way to be like, oh yeah, these guys are up against all odds, and that's what sells. Because it's like, how the heck are they gonna do it? But
Yeah,
maybe Liquid Steel and Wild Science would be the bad guys.
it certainly could be. Wild science, liquid steel. Oh, and then Dr. Notes comes in.
Maybe they battle each other.
Yeah. The music versus the elements.
I like it.
It's all frequencies. It'll work out.
I like it.
Well, speaking of wild science, it's a good transition
Ooh.
point right on into I think we should dive in.
Damn, you are good, Carter. I love that transition game.
Thank you.
Do it. Do it.
Do it.
So,
Go.
little background here. Carter's going to hop into the synopsis, but just to reiterate, the story we're going to be discussing today is The Devoted Friend by Oscar Wilde, written in 1888, so it's a little dated, but still a classic story. And after choosing it, Carter and I found that it's actually written as a children's story, but once we read it, we found a lot of cool things in there that we think we could talk about. So even though it's geared towards children, it's still a story with a valuable lesson, and we thought it was really cool, so we're still going to talk about it.
Yeah, we're not just gonna throw it out because it's for children. It's kind of like those old Disney films. Shane and I were just talking about this before we booted up the pod. But yeah, so like all those old Disney films, you got, you know, it's very childish. Well, I shouldn't say childish. Some of those themes are still pretty far out there for children. But it's just more portrayed in a childish manner so they can really wrap their minds around it. But if you watch it, so you watch it as a kid, you're like, oh, it was such a good film. I love the part when the elephant flew away with his big flappy ears. That is not talking about anything.
Yeah.
That's not a story. I just made that up. Big flappy eared elephant.
That's 100% original.
That is pure
TM.
good content. But yeah, so they see it as one thing when, you know, the adults in the room are watching it. They're picking up these other themes that are just going right over kids' heads. So we read this story and thought this is a great example of that. There's some deep truth involved in this. So we figured we'd throw it in the pod and jumble it up, mix it around.
And if you have not read this story, don't worry, we're going to read a very detailed synopsis, and we're going to talk about the whole thing, but we still recommend you check it out. You can check it out at wild-online.info and look up The Devoted Friend on there. Otherwise, we did share a link to it on our Facebook page as well. But we do recommend going and reading it. It's quick 7 pages. It'll take you 15 minutes. But without further ado, Carter, you want to give the listeners a brief rundown?
Yeah, let's just get right in.
Sorry, one more thing. We're not going to say spoiler alert or whatever because it's over 130 years old.
This is not new content, ladies and gentlemen.
It's almost over 130 years old. Sorry. So, all right, Carter, I'll shut my mouth, please.
Yeah, please stop talking.
Take me away.
All right. That's enough out of you, Shane.
Yeah. All right. I'll see you next week, guys.
All right, I'm going to wrap this podcast up, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Shane. We'll be right back with more Shane after these brief messages. So, essentially, this story is kind of a double. There's 2 stories that are happening. It essentially opens with some animals, very child-friendly, I would say, that, you know, you kind of paints that image. One of the creatures, we will say, that I actually had to look up because I didn't know what it was. We'll get to it. The animal is telling a story about, you know, it's just a general moral. So there's a general story, and then there's a story inside of that story, so just so you guys don't get, you know, lost. So this is the general plot here. The Devoted Friend takes the form of a story within a story. Oh, well, there you go. The main narrative is told to a Walter rat by a linnet. The water rat, somebody put an extra L in there. That's my fault. It's a water rat talking to a linnet. The water rat chastises a duck for allowing her children to misbehave. When the duck responds that she is a good parent, the water rat says that he knows nothing about family life because he is single. He goes on to say that he is not interested in love, but thinks that there is nothing in the world more noble or rarer than a devoted friend. When the linnet asks the water rat what he would expect of a devoted friend, he replies, "I would expect my devoted friend to be devoted to me." In an attempt to show the water rat the foolishness of what he has said, the linnet tells him the story of little Hans and the miller. And this is where we go into the story within a story. During the spring, summer, and autumn, little Hans makes a living by selling the flowers and fruit from his beautiful garden. During the winter, he struggles to survive. Hugh, the wealthy miller, who owns several cows and sheep in addition to his profitable mill, claims to be a very good friend of little Hans. He often goes to see him from spring to autumn, always helping himself to a lot of little Hans flowers or fruit when he visits. So this guy's just going down there, grabbing whatever he wants, says, "Hey, you know, we're great friends." The miller never goes to see little Hans during the winter, claiming that he is certain that little Hans would not like to be bothered during that difficult time of year. It's not in this general synopsis, but essentially he tells his family, you know, all of these reasons why he doesn't believe he should go down to see Hans in his difficult times.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting. Even the miller's son brings it up first. He's like, "Hey, what's Hans up to? if he needs a place, I'll share half my porridge with him, and he can sleep in my bed, and I'll sleep on the floor. And the miller flat out tells him, no,
You're
forget
stupid.
that.
You're a dumbass.
Yeah, he basically says,
Mature.
right, you obviously don't know the true meaning of friendship. Let me tell you. And after he kind of says that he refuses to help little Hans, his son has a little disdain for him, and his wife is like, wow, you're the most profound person ever. You know so much about being such a great friend.
Yeah, and her head is clearly buried deep in the ground.
It's so far up the miller's ass, it's just embarrassing.
She can't breathe, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, it's a problem. Anyways,
Yeah.
Carter.
Yeah, so far we've got this nice little lad who's got his flowers, and we don't know a whole lot about him yet, but we do know that this other guy, the big miller, is clearly a dick. So let's move on. At the start of the spring, the miller visits little Hans. He finds out that in order to have any money for food during the winter, little Hans was forced to sell several of his possessions, including his wheelbarrow. The miller tells Hans that he will give him his old wheelbarrow, which is in very bad condition, with one side completely missing. Hans replies that he can repair the wheelbarrow because he has a plank of wood at his house. The miller says that the plank is exactly what he needs to fix the hole in his roof. The miller goes on to ask Hans to fill a large basket with flowers. The miller tells Hans that it would be unfriendly to refuse him the flowers or the plank since he has promised him the wheelbarrow. So he's just like dropping a grudge on this dude immediately. Like, hey, so I'm about to give you this piece of crap wheelbarrow, and in exchange, everything in your life is mine.
Yeah, and I like how he goes, so in the narrative, which you'll find out when you read it, in the narrative, Hans goes, in response to being told that he can have the wheelbarrow that's in bad condition, he goes, oh, that's super cool, that works, because I totally have a plank of wood that'll be perfect for it. And the miller goes, oh yeah? Well, I'm going to give you my wheelbarrow, so you should just repair my roof with that plank. And Hans is like, oh, what? And Miller's like, yeah, and it would be really shitty of you if you didn't agree to this. So
super passive aggressively too. He's like, yeah, you're really not much of a friend then.
Yeah. Also, Oscar Wilde makes very liberal use of his characters saying, well, really. Oh, Thora's got some hot takes about this story now. Yeah, but don't worry, I'll tell him. Okay. Yep, all right, yeah. So Thora's trying to tell everybody that Oscar Wilde makes liberal use of well, really in his story to kind of like undermine what people are saying, and I find it to just be just over the top, and it makes me hate the Miller so much.
I know.
to be completely honest.
Right off the bat, I was like, so I was taking notes my first run through, and I go, so far, fuck the Miller. Like that was all I had to say about him. Yeah, I had a feeling that wasn't going to change.
Right.
Yeah, so not only was he like, yeah, I've got this plank that will be able to help me be able to use the wheelbarrow. The guy is like, I'm going to take that plank. And then also is like, yeah, and I'll see you tomorrow for you to fix my barn.
Yeah.
It's just terrible. So anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, you got more?
Well, no, I was actually just going to go on and read the next part of the synopsis.
Oh, go ahead, man. Jump on in there.
I don't mind if I do. So the following day, after the exchange with the wheelbarrow and the plank, the miller tells little Hans to take a sack of flour to the market for him. The next day, after that, he tells Hans to fix his barn roof with that plank we mentioned earlier. And then the day after that, he tells Hans to take his sheep to the mountain. So each day, the miller has another task for little Hans, which takes Hans all day to perform. The miller always tells Hans that it would be unfriendly of him to refuse, and reminds him that he has promised to give him his wheelbarrow. During all of this, little Hans has no time to tend to his garden, which he depends on to make a living.
Spew.
Yeah, and so, so as he's continuing to ask all these things of Hans what kills me is he's just such a good spirited soul. Like, he is so ready to help out a friend. I mean, it's only like at the last time when he's like, hey, can you take my sheep to the mountain, that he's like, oh, are you sure? Like, I really got to water my plants. And the miller's like, well, that's really, actually he goes, well, really, it would be extremely unkind of you to not oblige.
Yeah.
And guilts him into doing it and completely exploits him.
Yeah. Makes him feel like crap, and then makes him go out and do it. And I think it was about that time in the story that, like, he gets back from just that ridiculously long day of doing the sheep, gets back and just lays in bed and is like, oh,
yeah,
I'm so tired, and I can't even think about my garden.
And then the next day, after that, Carter, the miller comes over to ask him another favor, and when he gets to Hans's place, he notices that Hans is still in bed. And the miller straight up... Yeah, this is the part that gets me. After little Hans has been busting his ass for the miller, the miller comes over, sees him sleeping, and goes, wow, you are really lazy. You should... I don't like my friends to be idle. That's... that just shows what type of person you are, Hans. Wow. You are the worst.
You better get moving.
And Hans is like, I just wanted to sit... I think he says, I wanted to take a moment. Yeah, I wanted to listen to the songbirds. Don't you know I work a lot harder and I have a better day after the songbirds? And the miller just is like, doesn't even hear him. Goes back to being like, forget that. Like, you're being lazy. Get out of bed. I have another task for you. And Hans is like, all right. He hops out of bed and does it. So this goes on for a little while. And then, on a stormy night, the miller comes to little Hans's house. He says that his son is injured and tells little Hans to fetch the doctor, which is pretty far away. He refuses to lend Hans his lantern because it is a new one.
Let's take a second there. This lantern situation, he's not even letting him get there in safety.
No. So after he's like, hey, can I borrow your lantern, please, so that when I go and do this favor for you, I can make safe passage? Again, the miller reminds little Hans that he has promised to give him his wheelbarrow and that it is unfriendly to refuse help. So little Hans travels 3 hours through this crazy storm to get the doctor.
No lantern.
And no lantern. He can barely see. And then once he gets the doctor hops on a horse and is like, hey, keep up behind me. So Hans follows the doctor back to the miller's house. But, Hans isn't on a horse, and doesn't have a lantern. And since it's raining so heavily and it's difficult to see, Hans gets lost, and he wanders into the ditch off the road, and he drowns in a shallow pool off the side of the road.
That's just tragic.
Oh, man.
It's heart-wrenching, even though this is a synopsis of it's all coming back.
Yeah, not to mention that, like, I think it's funny that Oscar, like, the 1880s were crazy different, apparently, because, like, kids' stories from my day are like, and then the duck found his mom again, and he was happy, and he learned the value of sticking together with family, like.
Yeah, and then
it's
eventually
never
the
like,
miller was nice to Hans.
It's never like, hey, this guy was being a total piece of shit to this kid, and then the kid died, and the guy still was a piece of shit. Like, That's basically what this story is. So
it's just ridiculous. So now we got Hans, who just gave his life for the miller, and so the miller concludes that little Hans died. So yeah, it's later on the next day or the following couple days.
I believe at his memorial. Yeah.
The miller is there, and he's so. the funeral goes on. The miller is the first to walk and, pay his tribute because he was such a good friend and told everyone how good of friends they were. And then later on at a little inn where they were having their reception, the miller concludes that little Hans died because he promised to give him his wheelbarrow for free, and that just annihilated his ability to survive, I guess. He says, "I will certainly take care not to give anything away again. One always suffers for being generous."
Oh,
Just
what a piece of shit, dude. I hate this Miller.
I know he should have just been the bad guy for those superheroes. He should be the bad guy for every movie. He's the worst. So anyway, after having heard the story, we go back out of the story within a story to the water rat and the Lynette. So after hearing the story, the water rat says that he feels sorry for the sensitive miller. The water rat feels bad for the miller. The worst character. He feels bad for him for losing his devoted friend. Oh,
right.
His one and only true friend. Given this guy was rich and at the funeral was gathered around by a bunch of people, he had plenty of friends. The Lynette points out that there is a moral to the story. And right after hearing that, the water rat just is like, wait, what? There's a moral? Oh, I never would have listened if I knew there was going to be a moral to this. Eventually the water rat, so he's horrified. And he pretty much just takes off. He's like, all right, well, spread your knowledge to someone else, because I don't care. I'm happy with me and my devoted friend.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. And Carter, I think I wanna definitely touch on that. Which, this story is just so great. There's so many things to talk about with this story, but I love the way it concludes for a couple of different reasons. Before we get to that, though, let's talk a little bit. We have some kind of cues here that we wanted to talk about. So, Carter, what do you think is the significance of the animals that Wilde chose in the story? What do you think what purpose do you think they serve for the narrative?
I mean, I guess the water rat is kind of just like the bigot, like a type of person that just is solely, their entire universe revolves around them, and everybody else's say doesn't matter. They have all the knowledge, and that everyone should listen to them. I think the Lynette, which is, for you folks out there that don't know what that is, it's kind of like a stork or a crane.
No, actually,
bird, isn't it?
It's a very small bird.
Oh, it's small?
It's a real small bird. Yeah, last night I read this story again, and I had to look it up, and I was kind of wondering if Wilde chose these animals because of their specific traits. So a water rat is basically just like a rat that lives along waterways. I mean, pretty straight up. They kind of they kind of get their food source from the waterways, based on my understanding. And a Lynette is similar to a finch.
Okay, I think Google misinformed me.
Google screwed you on that one.
I looked it up and it was just a big bird, and I'm like, dope.
All right, got it.
I saw the first image and I'm like, I think I've seen enough here.
All right, and that'll do that. Yeah.
So I think the Lynette is kind of like a philosopher, like the wise man, kind of traveling around. He's just like, he's not really pushing his ideas on people and being boastful of his pride. He's not that prideful. He's just kind of like, well, you're seemingly in the midst of some funk, or you weren't brought up in a household with morals, and you just didn't get this information that most people should have, which is kind of just basic knowledge, be good to people. And he's like, well, let's see if this guy's not going to take, just like a, hey, it's not just about being having somebody that cares about you and will do anything for you. He doesn't want to just say, this is what it is. You know, he's like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm going to have to come up with a story for
I think
how to get this across to you.
I think you make a good point too about the Lynette kind of being experienced. I kind of see the Lynette as being worldly. And I think Wilde uses these animals, and I don't want to impose too much on what he intended, but I think he uses the animals he did for a couple of different reasons. One, I think that using a bird as this worldly figure makes sense because a bird would be able to fly, and we commonly refer to an overhead view of something as a bird's eye view.
Yep.
Meaning,
all. Sure.
Yeah, meaning you're able to take a step back and see like the macro version of whatever you're looking at.
Definitely.
Apart from that, and I kind of picked up on this based on the first sentence of the story, but I think it's interesting that he uses a water rat because a water rat is, so low to the ground, so close to the ground that they're just going to focus on their own thing. But also kind of going back to like your comment about him being closed-minded and kind of of that nature. Wilde starts the narrative by saying, "One morning, the old water rat put his head out of his hole," which
I think he would be a little smarter then for pulling his head out of his ass.
It does kind of sound like that, but at the end of the story, you learn that his head is still up his ass.
Yeah, he goes back in the hole.
Yeah, but I think it's important because Wilde is basically saying that water rats, because they live in holes, are not as ventured as, say, a bird would be, who has that bird's eye view. So maybe that's a way that Wilde kind of, before the narrative even starts, he's giving this impression that essentially, pun intended, that this water rat lives under a rock, is not worldly, does not know experience.
What, do you live in a hole?
Yeah, which you see right away, because he comes out and...
Just pompous, yeah.
Yeah, so the first scene is this water rat watching this mother duck do headstands and kind of...
Teaching her young.
Yeah, her young are all around her, and she's doing headstands, how ducks do when they're getting food, I would assume.
Or cleaning their head or doing something. I don't know.
Whatever. Yeah, they're washing their hair. I have no idea.
They want
to
give their legs some air.
Yeah, right. They're just, tanning out their ass. They're letting their ass breathe.
It looks good for the fish.
Yeah. So she's teaching her young by standing on her head, trying to lead by example. And her young are kind of like splashing around and not following example. And that's when the water rat steps in and chastises her for having misbehaving children.
Yeah. She's like, these guys don't even know what it's like to be in a society. I think it's because the mother duck is like, yeah, I'm trying to teach them so they can conform to society, so they can be, they can kind of blend in with the other ducks. That is a great point for the ducks, the animal of the duck, because, they kind of just follow the leader, which I think was kind of symbolic to like how we just go with the flow, like rip the 9 to 5, pay your taxes. Just follow the leader and, just conform to society and be okay with it. And I think the water rat's like, you don't even know how important, wait, was it the water rat? Who's like, you don't even know what it means to be in a society, or says something like that.
I think it's the...
Or is it the...
Lynette.
Yeah, the Lynette.
It's either the Lynette or the duck. But yeah, I totally agree with that too, Carter, because, the whole going with society thing, it kind of goes along the same vein of making sacrifices for the greater good, like knowing your place and playing your part and thinking outside of your own body to kind of like contribute in your own way.
Exactly. Be a part of the puzzle.
Yeah, I also think there's some symbolism that has to deal with the fact that the mother duck is doing headstands. Because the idea that she's putting her head under the water and trying to teach these young about it, one, she's teaching the youth and she's leading by example, but also she's doing something that at its very essence is uncomfortable or unnatural. You know, like you immediately want to go survival of the fittest, look after numero one, and, you know, do whatever's best for you. But sometimes you have to stand on your head, pun intended, and do something uncomfortable for the greater good.
Exactly right.
So
I saw that as more of like drowning, like putting your head under the water, like burying your head in the dirt.
Oh,
that's how I saw it.
Maybe a little foreshadowing.
Could be, yeah.
So, I also wanted to talk about the Miller and Hans a little more too, and the fact that this water rat sympathizes with the Miller. So, Carter, how would you characterize the Miller? What do you think enables him to perceive friendship in the way that he does?
So, I think the best. I was reading a note when you asked me that question. I'm sorry. I think I got it, but I feel like I might just start rambling about something that wasn't your question. Hit me with it again. Hit me with it again.
All right. So, how would you characterize the Miller, and what do you think enables the Miller to perceive friendship the way that he does?
I would definitely say the Miller is exactly the embodiment of the water rat. I mean, of course, we don't get examples. Yeah, we don't get examples of how the water rat. I mean, we kind of do, but we don't really. There is no friend to the water rat to kind of put it into perspective. We kind of just see the same energy from both. So you can expect that the water rat would kind of take advantage of a quote unquote friend, you know, if this story were to go on, or, you know, his backstory, front story, whatever. He's pretty much the Miller, except for the Miller has, I think, a little bit more charisma with his deviance. How he's kind of like, he's doing it sneakily and he's making the Hugh feel kind of good about it. But I think the water rat is kind of just like blatantly, you know, this is the way or the highway. You know, this is the... Right. He's just very straightforward and kind of
refuses... Yeah, he's very blunt in the fact that he refuses to be flexible in any sense of the idea.
Well, yeah, which the Miller does have some of that when he goes into his like, well, then you're not a friend if you don't do this for me. That's definitely blunt, but I see it almost as kind of like more of like a cheerful trap kind of thing where he's like, you know, kind of just a parasite where he like makes you think it's all good. Like, you're being such a good friend. Thank you for being a friend, and I cherish you. And then he tells, but the Miller is also very blind to his own arrogance, I should say. He doesn't even know he's doing it because he's like preaching it. He's not intelligent enough to realize that he's taking advantage of this person.
I think he's so caught up in the fact that he has the world by the tail that he doesn't think there's anything he can learn from anybody else. So he just assumes that given his, you know, his status as being an older guy who's done well for himself, who's kind of, he sees himself as like a role model. He doesn't see any fault in the way he acts. So why would he ever change and, you know, be a little bit more, I don't know, caring, be a little bit more thoughtful and considerate?
Yeah.
You know, I guess
that would you say that that's his ability to see that would correlate with intelligence?
Be able to see what?
To see what he's doing to the Hugh or to anyone else. The fact that he's blind to it. Do you think that has to do with his...
Well, here's the thing. I don't
his ability
think,
to see what he could be doing, I guess.
I
Intelligence.
guess I don't know, but I think one character that interests me a whole lot is the miller's wife, because
Yeah.
she repeatedly tells him, "Oh wow, you are so good with words. You are so smart. Not even the clergyman could speak as good as you." And the miller eats that shit right up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I mean, he digs it and he goes, "Yeah, you know what? You are right. I am the bee's knees. I am the shit. Damn, you are 100. Thanks, dear. Yes, I am the best." And I think that enables him to put the blindfold on and to continually treat Hans like a personal servant.
I bet that's exactly how their relationship is. Like, honey, could you please do the dishes? And
Well,
he's like,
really?
you know, if I did that, then I really wouldn't be being a good husband.
Yeah, well,
Because-
really. You put the food on the plate first, so it's really your job to do the dishes because you were the last one to touch it or whatever.
What kind
whatever
of man would
excuse
I
you-
be if I was prohibiting my own wife to not do her sole duty?
Yeah.
Soul
Well,
duty.
really, I have to go harass the neighbor boy, so what would you do, you know?
Yeah, are you really gonna hinder my ability to go and
Yeah.
fuck with that poor little man?
So do you think there's... Okay, so one other thing that bothers me, and I've been trying to think about the wheelbarrow, that broken wheelbarrow, as some type of symbol, or some...
Leverage.
So, yeah, it was used for leverage, but... Because the miller never actually gives him the wheelbarrow. Like Hans goes over to fix his barn, and you'd think that while he's over at the miller's place, he would just bring the wheelbarrow home, but he never actually gets the wheelbarrow from him.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if the wheelbarrow is meant to symbolize like their friendship or
Ah.
a source of like false hope or something.
Sure, sure.
You know, because to Hans it seems just what he needs. You know, he had to sell his wheelbarrow during the trying times, and the miller is not using it, so it seems like just what he needs, and he wouldn't trade the world for a broken wheelbarrow. It seems like, based on how much he's doing for it.
Yeah.
But to the miller, it's expendable. You know, he even says at the end that, you know, like, I'll never give away a wheelbarrow. And he says at the end that it's completely worthless to him. Like, it does no good for him to sell it because he'll make nothing. And he doesn't want to give it away either. And so being generous solves nothing. So that kind of equates to the fact that really the wheelbarrow is a piece of shit, just like the miller. But to Hans, it's overvalued because it's something that he doesn't feel he has.
Dude.
And little Hans didn't feel like he had any other friends in the story either, too. So,
Yeah.
you know,
It kind of gave Hans like purpose, because something that I don't think we talked about was the fact that every time that the miller went to see him, it wasn't just like an occasion that he would be like, "Hey, could I grab a flower or two, or maybe a couple?" This dude was rolling in with bigger baskets every time.
yeah.
This man
Yeah,
was
and
rolling in,
his
taking
wife
all
and-
of his flowers.
His wife would even be like, "Oh yeah, take the bigger one.
Yeah.
Make sure you come back with more baskets."
Yeah, we're gonna sell those. I don't know what you're doing with all those flowers, but like, yeah, this guy was as greedy as can be, and that is an absolutely tremendous point that you made, Shane. It was totally off my radar with the wheelbarrow, and their friendship. That's a great connecting point there. I didn't even think about it.
Well, thanks, man. So Carter,
I got.
oh, yeah,
something
go
I wanted
ahead,
to point out. I noticed that if you guys read this story, pay close attention to when they first shine some light on the Hugh and the Miller. It's like right when it goes into the beginning of the story. Inside the story, it says Little Hugh, and it says Big Miller, the Big Miller.
Big Hugh, the Miller, yeah.
Big Hugh the Miller, exactly. I've been saying Hugh, and it's Hans.
It's Hans, yeah.
Man, we're going to go back and listen to this episode. I'm just going to be saying Hugh the whole time for Hans. If I said Hugh tonight, ladies and gentlemen, that was Hans. Anyway, yeah, so it's you get both worlds here. You get little tiny Hans, such a sweet little soul, and you have big man Hugh the Miller, which I think was kind of saying, like, you know, sometimes the bigger and the stronger can kind of seize power, seize what they want, do what they want because of, you know, and it doesn't have to be stature, doesn't have to be your strength or anything like that. It can just be the way that you project yourself to other people. You know, if you have a very powerful ego, something like that can just trample on people with smaller egos or just that are a little bit more soft or secluded.
Right. Not to mention that socially they would have been totally on different social classes. And so to have it be the big Miller and little Hans, it really juxtaposes their relationship. You know, it already puts the Miller at that advantage and Hans with the lower hand.
And when Hans dies and the Miller is talking about him, that sweet poor little baby boy, little fresh out of the manger, little tiny little nugget of a man, Hans. He's not giving him any, you know, he's not beefing him up as a man. Like, this dude single-handedly ran a flower business and pretty much died in the winters, had to sell all of his stuff to survive with nobody coming and checking in on him. This dude was taking care of himself. That's far more impressive to me than, you know, having a whole family or, you know, a small community.
Totally.
And I think the entire congregation, when they were all there for his funeral, I think they remembered him in a good spirit, but they didn't really give him a lot of credit, you know, of being, you know, a brave man. This dude ran through the wet rain. That's what rain is. It's wet.
Surprise.
Yeah. Plot twist. It's actually steel. Yeah, so he goes out and goes running for the doctor. He's far braver than most people in that village, I'm sure, and I don't think he got that credit that he deserved. Because the Miller kind of talks him down, I think. Especially by blaming by blaming the wheelbarrow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, cool.
Absolutely.
This is a really good story, man. I love this story.
It really is. It really is. So, yeah, absolutely. Carter, I was going to read the last 4 paragraphs, because I wanted to talk about the anger that the water rat gets at the end. Do you think we have time for that, or should we move on to our ads?
We'll do it in a short, brief manner, because it's definitely worth talking about. Yeah. So, essentially, the question that I rose when thinking about this, what is the moral that Wilde delivers in the last 4 or 5 paragraphs of the narrative? So this is after the Lynette has already told the story and ends the story, and this is essentially the water rat's reaction to it. "Well," said the water rat after a long pause. "Well, that is the end," said the Lynette. "But what became of the Miller?" asked the water rat. "Oh, I don't know," replied the Lynette, "and I am sure that I don't care." "It is quite evident that you have no symphony in your nature," said the water rat. "I'm afraid you don't quite see the moral of the story," remarked the Lynette. "The what?" screamed the water rat. "The moral." "Do you mean to say that the story has a moral?" "Certainly," said the Lynette. "Well, really," said the water rat, in a very angry manner, "I think you should have told me that before you began. If you had done so, I certainly would not have listened to you. In fact, I would have said, 'Pooh,' like the critic."
However, I can say it now. He shouted out, "Pooh," at the top of his voice, gave a whisk of his tail, and went back into his hole. "And how do you like the water rat?" asked the duck, who came paddling up some minutes afterwards. He has a great many good points, but for my own part, I have a mother's feelings, and I can never look at a confirmed bachelor without the tears coming into my eyes. "I am rather afraid that I have annoyed him," answered the linnet. "The fact is that I told him a story with a moral." "Ah, that is always a very dangerous thing to do," said the duck, and I quite agree with her. And that's the end of the story. So, real quick, my thoughts on this are that the reason that the water rat has an issue with there being a moral to the story, which, one, he totally missed, because the moral of the story is that friendship is a two-way street. One friend has to be equally devoted as the other friend, and that's the best, most healthy relationship.
Yep.
So, the fact that the error is that she told a story with a moral kind of lends to the fact that this water rat really thinks that he has everything figured out and that he does not need any sort of help with anything. Yeah, he has everything going.
In his hole.
Right, yeah, and I think it's just really interesting the way that the two of these birds are essentially like, yeah, it's really sad to think that somebody can be so narrow-minded in the sense that they think they don't need anybody and that they have everything figured out. You know, and I think that's kind of where Oscar Wilde wants to leave us, with the fact that a devoted friend is one thing, but devotion in a friendship is another thing, because you can be a devoted friend or you can be two devoted friends, plural.
Exactly.
And I think that's really important, and I think that's the whole moral of the story.
Bingo. There we
Ding,
have it,
ding,
ladies
ding.
and gentlemen.
And that is it. So
No more.
So, anyways, that's the story. Really awesome story, and I really dig it. Carter, do you want to jump into the ad lab?
Yeah, wrap it with some ads.
Advertisements.
So yeah, the other week I was at a party and I was like, just really not feeling it. I had been working all day prior. I'm at this party. People are wasted. People are jumping out of windows into pools. The car is in the pool. You know, I wasn't digging it. I was like, I would much rather just being home and staring at the ceiling, you know. That seems so much better to me. So I got on the internets and I looked through all the archives of Reddit and came across this great new product, and I think it's going to help me out. So I want to know what you guys think about it. You think it'll help? We'll see.
The Party Pooper.
Have you ever made plans in advance, but when the day of the event comes, you just don't want to go? Of course you have. We've all experienced the shame of letting your friends down by telling them you've changed your mind and would rather sit in your sweatpants and watch reruns of The Office, just like every other weekend. We'll say goodbye to the shame and guilt with the Party Pooper. The Party Pooper is a service that will generate excuses to stay in for you. By downloading the mobile app, you'll have access to hundreds of convincing excuses. Excuses range from
Someone stole the tires off my car.
to
Sorry, but I have to tend to my dad's hemorrhoids.
The app not only generates excuses, but it also adds audio to phone calls based on the chosen excuse. So how can your friends prove you're lying about your cat's hemorrhoids when they can hear the pain and the moaning of a feline in the background of your phone calls? Download the Party Poopers mobile application today and start being the couch potato you really, really want to be. Party Poopers. The night is most fun when the party is done.
Wow. Yeah. I can tell you, I've used this a bunch, and it fools everyone. No one can tell.
I found this, and I was actually about to give you a ring. Before we did this podcast, just get out of it.
Fun fact for the listeners at home: Carter really had to tuck his tail in shame because the whole my computer crashed. It was a party poopers thing. It wasn't even a real thing.
Oh my gosh!
What a piece of shit!
3 weeks, man.
Yeah, 3 weeks of sorry. Yeah, no, computer's totally fucked. Sorry.
Yeah, I may or may not have gotten a new video game.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that one's great. That one's great. I like it. I like it just as much as our next product. It's called
the tablet.
A tablette.
Yeah, it's table-et. Tablet.
Tell me about it.
It's time to say goodbye to the dreary conversations of family dinner. Have you ever sat down to dinner with your family and they won't stop asking you monotonous questions about school or work or even your love life? Do you just want to enjoy your mashed potatoes in peace? Well, the tablet is the product you've been waiting for.
This table-sized tablet will keep you connected even at the dinner table. With the tablet, each person at the table has a digital placemat. The digital placemat not only has a heating element to keep your food warm, but it also has all the capabilities of the latest smartphone or iPad. And since everyone will have their own screen, you don't have to feel antisocial about ignoring the only people that truly care about you. The only thing you'll have to think about now is how to say pass the salt, using emojis. The tablet, because real conversations is the leading cause of anxiety in millennials.
Is that the voice you're going with there?
It was kind of German, kind of French. It didn't...
Yeah, I don't know where that was.
I was coming from... It's kind of... I think it is a little bit German.
This is okay. It's okay.
Little mouse boy. Little man boy mouse.
Oh, man.
Here to tell you about the tabletta.
Yeah, this table is pretty freaking cool. I mean, the only issue with it that we've found is, it works with your parents for the most part, but if you have your grandparents over, it kind of defeats the purpose because they're just going to, instead of asking you about your personal life, they'll just start asking you about, well, how do I get the plate warmer on? And, what are these little picture thingies you're sending to me?
Can you
emojize?
Emojize. Can you put the Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy on for me there? Please?
Yeah.
I want my program.
Yeah, but it is a really cool product.
Yeah, imagine playing air hockey while having a bowl of macaroni and cheese. Like
pretty rad.
And you can play like whip with your cup. With your beverage in it. Bing, bing. I don't know about that.
Maybe. You never know.
I don't know.
Nice.
Maybe.
Well,
it's a great product, though. It's coming out in stores 2020. So you can, because it's high definition, so they wanted that to be a funny little anecdote. You'll be seeing your food and your program in 2020.
In 2020.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, Carter, I got one more for you, and this one I think is my favorite one because it sounds badass. Are you ready?
Yes. Give it to me.
The Villain Experience.
Are you tired of those stuck-up protagonists always getting their way? Are you annoyed by the Hollywood hero always foiling the villain's plans right at the end of the story? If that's the case, the Villain Experience is your new favorite place.
The Villain Experience combines your three favorite things: the iconic stories, new technology, and most importantly, you.
Using virtual reality technology, you can now enter into the world of your favorite book, TV show, or movie and become the bad guy.
Harness your inner evil by besting the good guys and rewriting your favorite stories. Become some of your favorite villains like
Darth Sidious from Star Wars,
the Joker from Batman,
the shark from Jaws,
and even one of the gremlins from that one movie.
It's time to take down those lucky, pompous heroes once and for all. The villain experience.
Hey Luke, who's your daddy now?
In a world.
In a world with virtual reality.
Which is this one?
And you can be the bad guy.
Do you want to be a bad guy?
Are you tired of the good guy? Fuck those guys.
In a world where you can wreak havoc on anyone you want. What will you do? And what power will you have, Dr. Notes?
I think this is a really cool product though, because I think that it puts a fun spin on like video games, you know? Like it kind of reminds me of there's like a Friday the 13th video game where you're like the bad guy and you're chasing down all the
Freddy Four Fingers? Oh wait, no.
You're thinking Nightmare on Elm Street. That would be Jason, the guy with the machete. And the hockey
dude, I
mask.
always mix those guys up.
I do too. I mean, it's like Mark and Matt, you know? Like, they're just two white guy names.
Yeah, or like Map.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's a super cool product, and I'm really excited for it. I think first, I probably want to be... what villain would you want to play if you were to go? That's my first question when I saw this ad come up. I was like, what would I be?
Well, I was mesmerized, Lee. I was mesmerized / shocked and scarred all at once.
Oh, I'd want to be Scar from The Lion King.
No! Mufasa!
Yeah. Long live the king. Motherfucker!
So prepare for challenge
Tossed.
of a lifetime.
Tossed.
See ya! Dude, they just
Hear
made
the sad music.
They just made a brand new Lion King. And I fear that TM. Yeah, that's original content too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine seeing like high fidelity animations of Mufasa getting chucked into a stampede, and then little baby Simba running up on him like, "Papa." That's just no, dude. The early one was enough. I think that's gonna mess
fair.
kids up.
That's fair. Yeah. All right. Cool. Well,
hold on.
Carter.
If I was a villain, I'm going with Jaws because that just seems ridiculous. Like,
it seems kind of fun.
It does. Like, oh, there's a boat. Jump.
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat that.
Nom. Thank you.
There's an underwater base. Jump. Eat that.
Yeah.
Dude, there was an old application where you actually were a shark.
Yeah.
Did you play that?
Yeah, I used to play that all the time. That was a lot of fun.
You could just eat everything. Like submarine. Oh, jump. And you just get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
I think eventually you come out of you actually have to like jump over like Manhattan and like take buildings out and helicopters and like and stars eventually. You were jumping way high into the sky.
It was a pretty rad game.
That's like superpower Jaws.
Superhero Jaws.
Laser beams.
Yeah. Well, Carter, I've noticed that I've been swearing more and more, so I think it'd be a good time to wrap up the show here.
Yeah.
I think we're actually running a little over on our time. So thank you all so much for joining us. We really do appreciate all your support. And if you guys ever want to see any story on the podcast, or if you ever want to see any narrative at all, whether it's like a story for the big screen, or a written story, or a concept album.
If you write a story.
Yeah, or if you write a story that you think would just be really cool and you put a lot of work into, send it to our Facebook page. We'll definitely really consider putting it on. I mean, we really want to make this your podcast. So if you have a story out there that you want to hear us talk about, or that you have good input on, feel free to let us know. Carter, what do you want to talk about next week? I have a short story in mind, but I almost want to branch out a little bit.
I'm thinking that too. You know what I was
thinking?
Maybe.
What's up?
I was thinking, because we were kind of talking about this in the last episode about conspiracies, and
Ooh.
I think that would, it doesn't have to be next one, but very soon. I think that would, because we could just go to town on that.
Yeah.
Such a open-ended outlet.
You know what I kind of wanted to talk about next time, Carter?
What's that?
I kind of wanted to talk about Star Wars, and like, I kind of wanted to talk about Anakin as the anti-hero, you know?
So you think he went to the dark side, but truly he was a double spy? I don't know.
No, I think he was kind of like dark-sided the whole time, and in the end he makes the right decision. I don't know. Maybe next week we'll have a debate.
But that's kind of how it goes, isn't it? Because he's Darth Vader, and then he's on the Death Star. They blow the Death Star up. Spoiler alert. And then he takes his helmet off after saving Luke.
Oh.
I think. Yeah. After he fights Palpatine.
Well, he just throws He throws Anyways, Carter, let's talk about it in the off week.
Get out of here.
Everyone check our Facebook page, and we will let you know what we decide on. Yeah. Or just tune in next week for a really sweet surprise.
It's going to be nice. It's going to be good. It's going to be fresh, hot, steamy, warm, lukewarm.
Absolutely.
Cold, everything.
Absolutely. All right, well, signing off. Shane here. Thanks, everyone.
Over here. I just cut you off with my name. Shane there, Carter here. A little bit of both. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. Have a good ass week. Peace.
See ya.